Your journey begins as you set off from Errol Sprystep's library, and you follow the river around the outskirts of the town and find yourself back on the rocky rubble road that leads up to the north, the map that had been afforded to you by Aaron, providing some guidance on your journey. You're noticing as you travel that you definitely seem to be attracting more attention the longer you are here. Word does seem to be spreading, even within the very small population, that there are travelers who have arrived and they are walking around asking questions. You are aware, as Aaron again relayed to you, that Willowdale, with all of the things that it has endured over the past year, its population dramatically decreased. Most people in the village are quite excited to see new faces, which gives them some kind of hope that the village itself has not been abandoned or cursed by the gods. However, there is the opposite side of things, small pockets of the population which are more than anything else suspicious, and a lot of people are kind of waving over to you, some of them deciding to point instead, and then murmuring and whispering between themselves and whoever happens to be around them. You eventually walk away and the sounds of the crowds begin to lessen as you leave behind the residential district. And once again, you're noticing that there is no real form of military guard. There is no show of force or security as you travel these roads. It takes you about 25 minutes following the winding road up through various slopes and hills before you find yourself looking into the distance, looking down a bit more into the valley, what is very clearly a singular building, a lodge. And there is a small amount of smoke coming up from a chimney that extends out of a fairly thick straw roof that you can see. You begin your approach down the cobblestone road towards what is very clearly Hunter's Lodge. You can see that there are dried fishes, barrels of grain, and possibly other luxuries in the courtyard. Off to the left of what is very clearly a tacked-on entranceway, there are a series of tools, log-splitting axes, anvils, simple but crude tools used for a variety of different things. As you approach, you can see that the wooden doors, the double doors on this annex, are currently ajar. What would you like to do first, chat? Do a flip! So much freedom, dude. I legit memed, but oh well, this is the price of freedom, Falcon, okay? You need to be responsible. You know, somebody just, casually types in seduce or throw orb or eat orb, and then people start voting for it. It's Twitch chat. All right, do a flip. Okay, chat. I need an acrobatics check from you as you limber up, ready for anything that could happen at any given time that might require you to do a backflip. Cypher! Here he comes, man, to steal a roll. What's our modifier? I should, ooh, 11. Okay, so with an acrobatics of +5, that makes it a 16. You're all kind of walking down there, taking a bit of a stroll. You know, you've got Roga, who's constantly at the back of the group, your total companion, constantly in a state of bewilderment and amazement. Trenk is ever cautious, ever on the lookout, ever observing, and seems perplexed when you do a couple of stretches and you kind of stop. Your total companion begins to catch up with you. Owl then turns around to look at you expectantly, and then you just do a backflip in the middle of this pathway. And Roga just starts clapping and cheering. Not one for words, but definitely one for enthusiasm at any given time. And Trink just kind of slowly, with a frown on his face. And Alden is just staring at you like, doesn't really understand what just happened. Well, I'm glad to see that you're feeling limber, as he then just kind of looks at you once more with a quizzical expression and then pivots on the spot and then begins walking towards the building. Lie check? Okay, yeah, we do a lie check. Okay, so while we're voting, exclamation mark dice in the chat, 15! Well, you do have an insight of +5, so that's a dirty 20, as we say around these parts. Trank is very clearly confused by your behavior sometimes. And this often surprises him because you're both from the same world, and yet there is so much difference between the two of you. But he often finds your antics endearing and often comments about how nice it is to have somebody with so much enthusiasm and life about them, as he's very used to, in his previous life, spending all of his time around very stern and boring folk in the military. So he just kind of chuckles, and you feel a little bit of lightheartedness within yourself as you feel like maybe you've lifted his spirits or maybe lifted a little bit of tension from the air. You decide to scout. All right, so I'm going to need a investigation check from you, chap. Essentially, I'm going to give you kind of like a general sense of things as you walk around with your perception, as it is very high. But the investigation check is going to be to try and determine the small details about the environment that somebody else might miss, if there are any. Elock. Okay, so 6 plus 1 is 7. I can do maths. As you move around the left-hand side, you can very clearly see that this space outside is very frequently used. There's not a lot of dust that seems to have settled in this area. A lot of it seemingly being moved around by, the scuttling of feet, other times being swept away as there's a fairly large steel bristle broom that's leaning up against the wall of the house itself. As you look to your right, you can see that there is no light currently inside the building. No lanterns lit or candles. It's the middle of the day currently, so there's a small amount of sunlight entering in, but it doesn't seem to be illuminating a whole lot. As you enter the back of the building, the rear, you can see that there are numerous cages stacked on top of each other, of various sizes. A couple of them seem to have a small amount of dirt, perhaps dried blood, and as you're looking at it, maybe rust on them, on some of the bars that are a little bit more under the cover of darkness as the shadow is cast towards the back of the building. Around the right-hand side, fairly featureless, there are a couple of racks upon which there are tanning leathers and dried meats. Before long, you find yourselves back around the front side of the building as it faces the path, and you don't feel as though you've really noticed anything necessarily out of the ordinary. Fairly confident at this point that the area is secure, you now are standing at the door. You are aware that you are here to meet someone. How you enter the building is up to you. There are windows, there is a door that is, as I said, ajar. Okay, so deciding to check for traps, we are going to do an investigation check, and we will say that you knock after checking, depending on the outcome, just so we can move things along. Shadow Squared, please give us the roll. 6, okay, so 6 plus 1. Apparently we're not rolling higher than a 7 today on investigation checks. That's fine, get it all out of the way now. You very quickly check the linings of the door, peeking inside, taking care not to poke your head too far in case there is a trap. To your relief, you discover that you cannot see any traps. You're not entirely sure if that means that there aren't any, but as best as you can tell, there don't seem to be any traps within this space. You then decide to knock on the door, as was the other half of the vote. And as you do this, you very clearly hear some kind of shifting from within the building, something moving. You then hear the clattering and smashing of glass, and you just make out, barely perceptible, somebody just saying, "Fuck." What do you do? So this sound comes from somewhere deep within the building. Okay, so you call out to this individual, asking if anybody's there. You state that you're here from the town, investigating on behalf of it, about the thefts taking place. There's a moment of silence before the voice calls back to you. Yeah, come in, the door's open, just come in. The voice seems a little breathless, and this person seems mildly distressed as they call out to you. Enter dramatically, do a flip. Wait, no, I should close the vote. I'm closing the vote. So, entering without doing a flip, you cautiously make your way into the building, again searching around for any signs of an ambush or any kind of trap left behind to ward off intruders. As you enter in, you see what would ordinarily be quite a cozy abode. Again, no lights currently lit. Some beams of light cascading in from the windows to your left. There are a series of fairly rudimentary racks upon which you can see more tools, the occasional weapon, and furs, skin of various beasts. You can also see that on the far side of the room, from the doorway, there is a very large stone slab upon which you can very clearly see some meats have been butchered. As you look towards your right, further into the darkness, you can see a figure with your dark vision slumped over on a chair, seemingly grasping at their leg. Their whole entire posture kind of slumped over, clutching around the shin. Wouldn't want new people to see me like this. Come on, come in. I promise I'll do you no harm. As you enter the room, and this individual reaches over to a lantern that is currently placed upon a table that fills most of the space. Twiddling a small screw and striking a match to light it. Now with the space fully illuminated, color returning to your vision, you can very clearly see what seems to be a relatively young human individual. Dusty blonde hair, sort of wavy down to the shoulders. Seems as though half of the hair is loosely tied up into a ponytail that they seem to have either loosened the hair from or pulled off to the side. This individual is a mess. They have very sharp features, fairly pale skin, though sun-blotched in various areas over the cheeks. They are very clearly wearing practical leather armors, hunting gear, so as to move around without making too much sound. But as you stare down and this individual releases their shin, you can very clearly see that there is blood drenching the armor where the boot has been removed. The linens that seem to have been wrapped around it just completely reddened by whatever injury this individual has sustained. You can very clearly see that this person is also sweating profusely, and there are deep, dark bags under their eyes. What do you do? Okay, so offering help. Trenk kneels down next to this individual, who reveals their name to be Hunter. A little bit of an inside joke within the town, but nonetheless a very literal hunter of the Hunter's Lodge. Trenk unbandages the wound. You can very clearly see, I'm not going to go into too much detail here for people who might have issues with that, a very infected wound. Some of the skin around it has become very discolored, purples and greens, and very dark, almost rusty browns. As you take a look at it, I need you to give me a medicine check to see if you can determine what the cause of injury might be. As you're kind of taking in your surroundings, again, you can see this individual has very clearly made attempts to block out the light in the room in which they are sitting, and you're not entirely sure why that might be. Susanna, hit us with the roll. 17, I think it's plus 3. So dirty 20, let's go. Taking a look at the wound, you can see the wound is very clearly inflicted entirely around the leg. And it's very clearly pierced very deep, possibly down to the bone. You take a very close look at it, leaning down, and between yourself and Trenk, you immediately deduce that this individual has stepped in some kind of trap. Ironically, as you take a look at it, you can see that this injury has passed the point where ordinary magic may be able to fully restore the leg to previous conditions. Too much time has passed. But that doesn't mean that you can't do anything at all. You also notice that some of the discoloration on the wound itself seems to indicate some kind of infection. And then as you look closer, you think, maybe infection isn't the right word. Maybe infestation is. This individual is very clearly suffering from some kind of fever, onset by some kind of poison that has entered into the system. You relay this and Hunter confirms the story. Essentially what had happened is that last night, one of their dogs had gone missing, Hugo, and they went out into the forest in haste. They were not paying due attention to the surroundings and happened to step into one of the bear traps that had been left earlier in the week. They kept searching after freeing themselves eventually, but did not find any success. Forced at that point, very clearly suffering from some kind of ill effects of the wound, they had to return home to the lodge to rest and recuperate. However, it doesn't seem to this individual that the wound seems to be healing. The bandaging that was previously applied didn't seem to be badly done, but just didn't seem to be having an effect. So Hunter speaks out to you and says, "So you said you were here to investigate the thefts. Hope you understand. I've got more pressing issues right now, but I'll tell you what I know, and I don't know, could you help me? I can't go back out there again like this." What do you say? During the process of Trink attempting to bind some of the wounds, using some of his own healing magic to soothe the pain and repair some of the tears in the skin, it seems to bring some relief. But basically, during this time, you find out that Hunter does in fact have information for you about the thefts, but right now, their priority is making sure that they find Hugo, hopefully safe. Agreeing to help Hunter find Hugo, the lost hunting hound, you ask a series of questions to find out if there's anything that Hunter knows that might help find this dog. Unfortunately, Hunter relays that they didn't hear anything, notice anything unusual the day before. All of a sudden, Hugo was just gone. Lie check? Ooh, that's a sus check. Okay, enter with the dice, and I'll keep talking while we figure this out. Hunter does relay also, during this time as you're kind of talking and preparing, that although they can't directly help you with your mission, they can at the very least tell you what was stolen. The items that were stolen from Hunter's lodge were a hunting trap, a dozen wooden pikes, and a foldable cage, a collapsible cage. Those are the things that went missing about 2 weeks ago. Sus Anna, please hit us with the roll. 16 plus 5, so 21 total. Hunter seems desperate. You do not sense a hint of a lie, either when they're talking about the circumstances around Hugo's disappearance or the items that were stolen. You're very clearly finding out that Hunter does not seem to have any kind of time for messing about, any time for idle chat, fussing about things that they don't think matter. So you feel, at the very least in the immediate circumstances, that Hunter seems to be trustworthy. This happened, obviously, 2 weeks prior to Hugo going missing, so you do not know if they're necessarily related. Agreeing to help, you exit back out of the house. As you do so, Trank relays to you that he's seen infections like this before. Isn't entirely sure what caused this one, but nonetheless, the wound at this point is so severe that it's unlikely, without very powerful magic, that they'll be able to keep the leg. Amputation is definitely an option that may help this person survive, as the infection is likely to spread. The condition is going to keep getting worse and worse to the point where it's actually so severe that they are at risk of death. Trank does relay that he's done some hasty amputations in the past. He could probably attempt it, obviously with consent from Hunter. You decide at this time, since you have the luxury of time on your side, there's no reason to immediately make rash decisions. So you continue outside, taking a look around, looking for any kind of indication about what might set you in the right direction. Let's do a survival check. So a survival check is essentially checking the area for any kind of traces of a creature moving through or anything left behind. Anything that could tell you where to start at this point in time. 16 plus 5. Okay! So a total of 21. I can do math. Hell yeah. You take another check around the surrounding area, and there are a couple of things that you notice. Very small footprints in the slowly drying soil surrounding the building, leading up to the fences, that seem to have been almost entirely covered up by grass. But nonetheless, you manage to find them sifting through. These footprints appear to be vaguely humanoid in nature. You can very clearly see indentations of not just, the sole of the foot, the heel, but you can also see toes. So whoever came through here recently, perhaps taking Hugo, was walking barefoot. you see that there is only one set of footprints that leads out further north towards the fence. As you take a look around, you also see something that catches your eye about the rust on the cages that are under the shadow of the house. And also you find some of this rust lining the fence, which would ordinarily impede an individual from entering. Specifically along the metal areas. This rust seems to have a strange coloration to it, something unusual. And you identify that this is not just any kind of rust. In fact, it's not rust at all. It's actually mold. A very specific kind of mold called russet mold. Russet mold is a particular substance left behind by creatures called vegipygmies. And it seems as though Roga is getting very close to one of these and seems to be holding out a hand, perhaps to try and scrape some off. You can see he's kind of salivating a little bit. However, as this happens, you immediately remember russet mold can be deadly and is very likely the cause of the infection that Hunter is currently suffering from. If Roga gets too close, there's a good chance that the mold will release spores.